start to your Tuesday. It's a pleasure to be with you always, and it's a pleasure to once again be with my co-host, Damichael Cole. Damichael from Salt Lake City, Utah. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good. Shawn, I'm going to put the theory to the test in a minute. I think I'm going to order some pizza and we'll see, how I'm feeling come game time.
I don't know if you want to sit there. Legend has it that may not end up too well for you, and I don't want you to sit there and get sick, man. We got some important games coming up. Of course, you can find Damichael Cole at Damichael C on Twitter. Hopefully, there won't be any updates or lulls in updates as he's recovering from food poisoning over the next 24 hours. My name is Shawn Coleman. You can find me at StatsSAC on Twitter, the show at Locked On Grizz. Podcast free on all platforms. Obviously, right here on YouTube as well. Hit that subscribe button below. So, Damichael, let's get right into it. So, obviously, we talked yesterday about how this was a big week coming up. Utah, Denver, New Orleans, then Boston. But as you alluded to, the big news is what were going to be the updates on Ja Morant. And it does seem nothing really major, but it does seem that there's at least a little bit of positive progression going on in terms to his return to play plan. What's the latest from what you're hearing when it comes to Ja Morant?
Yeah, so Taylor Jenkins gave an update at shoot around and basically said that Ja Morant was a full participant in practice. I'm going to get to why that's important, even though it was it wasn't a contact practice, still a full participant in practice. So Taylor Jenkins has this thing, he's going to be reevaluated in 2 weeks is what they said almost 2 weeks ago. That 2 week time frame is Thursday. That's the same day they play the Denver Nuggets. And a lot of people, when they heard that 2 week frame, kind of assumed that, he's probably going to be out Thursday because that's the day the reevaluation is over. Well, Taylor Jenkins also said a couple weeks back that time frame in between this 2 weeks, when he said the words, offloading, he said a lot of that time was spent, reloading him and ramping him up. So what you're seeing right now, even in the non-contact practice, is Ja Morant is ramping up. He's doing more and more and more to the point where all they need is the word on Thursday. And once they get the word, I think it'll be a good chance he can play, Shawn.
And it'll be fun to see. Like, I was interested going into this road trip, Damichael, with it being the last road trip of the year. The Grizzlies had already put a little bit of emphasis on resting some folks. Obviously, Dillon Brooks likely is going to be out tomorrow, as we expected after Friday night's game. But you get this 2-day rest. But was going to be interested in seeing what they may do going out on this West Coast trip, especially being in high altitudes, thin air. Don't want to sit here and stress it out too much. But it does seem like that there's the chance that Ja Morant could play. And I'll be honest with you, I know that we've got 3 games in 4 nights, but you let him play Thursday, let him get a little bit of momentum going into Sunday, perhaps, to be able to play some games. Then you've got the layoff to allow the play-in tournament to happen. That's multiple games. That actually may be a good return to play action because it gives him a little bit more activity before you really get going in the playoffs.
And Shawn, the injury was a knee injury. Yes, it's just soreness, everyone. It's not some big freak injury. But those of you who have played basketball, the knee in basketball, like my man Shawn here, the knee in the basketball is almost, outside of your hand. It's one of the most valuable parts to a basketball player's body. And the thing about the knee is, even when you're healthy from a physical standpoint, where Ja Morant is pretty much that at this point. I mean, I doubt he is, really lingering, from that perspective. I think a bunch of it is mental. You have to be able to cut and do those same things full speed without, one, worrying about the potential soreness to come back, and two, the soreness actually coming back as well. But it's a big mental hurdle as well. So that's why the ramping up period is so important. And that's why these, next couple days, how Ja progresses in that, area as well is going to be just as important as anything.
It's funny that you mentioned, my playing days back in my
2 points a game. I remember those days for you, right, Shawn? You said 2 points a game, 38% shooting.
Yep. 3/4 of the season, my 6th grade year, I was held out of load management, and it was the initials LS. I tell people all the time it was lingering soreness, but actually the LS stood for lack of skill. But anywho, the thing that I'll say is this: is that listen, with Ja coming back, it's great to see. But again, the whole point is that we don't need to, in any way, shape, or form, and the Grizzlies are not going to do this. Don't need to push him, but Ja's ready to come back. It's been assumed, and I think there's, a bit of legitimacy to it, that if this were the playoffs, Ja would be playing, but the Grizzlies just don't want to take any chances. But the other thing is that beyond Ja, we also look at the fact that the Grizzlies are wanting to protect, their other players as well. We know that, Jaren Jackson has had a bit of soreness, himself. Others I don't necessarily think are the case. I think others, but besides Tyus Jones's finger injury, but the Grizzlies are relatively healthy. The main thing is this week, though, starting tonight, you just don't want to, in any way, shape, or form, prevent or potentially increase the chances that one of your players get injured. And that's why I think they're going to have more people available than some might think, so that they can continue to use their depth to make sure players aren't overworked.
Right. And what we're seeing right now is kind of like a staggered, type of, rest period. Dylan Brooks rests this game. All those guys who, rest the last game should be back for the most part. So you're seeing some staggered rest periods. And then, you're also seeing, guys, just get more opportunities, because that's a big thing that Taylor Jenkins is emphasizing, in this stretch as well. So that's another part to look forward to. We just saw, Santi Aldama step up. We saw D'Anthony Melton play more on the ball. That could possibly come big in the playoffs at some point. We're seeing expanded roles and different types of roles for these guys. And those little things can't be overlooked. D'Anthony Melton playing on the ball was probably the 10,000th thing on Grizzlies fans' mind when they upset the Suns. But, if something were to happen, it's kind of a comfort level knowing, well, we got D'Anthony Melton too, who actually, was pretty steady in that role against the Suns. So there's a lot of mixing and matching here. And then, you just mentioned with Ja, I mean, the biggest thing to him is if you get him back for those multiple games, you get to, have him play with those guys who are playing different roles in a way without him. And you don't get just one game with him. You get multiple games. You stack those on top of each other. You have 3 or 4 days off, while the play-in is going on. And you have a lot of film to watch. And this team, all these guys, from Zaire Williams, the rookie, to Dylan Brooks at the top, they all talk about how they break down film. Shawn, if you've seen Desmond Bane break down film, he is probably the most, in tune guy of the bunch, the way he talks about it. So that time is going to be really important for them too.
Agreed. And at the end of the day, again, we have our spot locked up in the playoffs. We've won the Southwest Division, but there still is something to play for. We'll discuss that in just a moment. Some more history when it comes to a team full of individuals and a roster itself that continue to make history, it seems, each and every time they play. But before we get to that, listen, we want to talk with you a bit about Prize Picks. I know the NBA season is winding down, Damichael, but the great thing is that, hey, it's the opportunity for you to be able to enjoy using your Grizzlies to profit. You can pick 2 to 5 players and an over-under on the projections, and you can win up to 10 times any entry, and it's you versus the projected numbers. I mean, Damichael, to be honest with you, it seems like that Steven Adams' offensive rebounding would be the perfect thing to bet on when it comes to Prize Pick. Am I wrong?
It's money. It's money. You bet the over every time, or you go 3 to 4 offensive rebounds. You're gonna get it, Shawn.
Exactly. Prize Picks doesn't just offer NBA. They have options when it comes to college basketball, college football, NFL, NBA, MLB, soccer, MMA, and more. For a limited time, Prize Picks has an exclusive no-brainer of an offer for all of their users. Users get $50 for free if a player in your first Prize Pick entry scores a single point, but you must use the code NBA. That's right. This is an exclusive offer available to Locked On fans. Sign up today and use code NBA, $50 for free. And if a player scores a Prize Picks entry, you will get $50 for free. The other thing I can tell you is that we want to talk about Prize Picks. We want to talk about using these props when it comes to Steven Adams getting offensive rebounds. But what about the Grizzlies getting the over? What about them winning their 56th game of the year? We'll again talk about why that's significant in a moment. When it comes to betting and wagering on sports, listen, the college basketball season just ended last night. Congratulations to the North Carolina the Kansas Jayhawks. Whoops, my bad. But when it comes to betonline.net, it's the simple and easy way for you to be able to bet on all your sports action. Pro basketball, hockey, boxing, golf, Masters is this week. Great sports week coming up. So many different things to wager and bet on. BetOnline's the fastest and easiest way for you to do it. Even Vegas casino games. When you want to get the most out of your betting and wagering experience, use betonline.net. Listen, we can't thank you enough for checking out the Locked On Grizzlies podcast. But, of course, we want to remind you of the Locked On NBA podcast with the final season here, of course, leading up to many teams who are still fighting for playoff spots. Darn, I miss those days. When it comes to Locked On NBA, they'll have the latest for you. Check out Locked On NBA as your second listen of the day after you check out Locked On Grizzlies. So, Damichael, I mentioned that there was a reason that the Grizzlies still have plenty to play for. Why don't you fill us in on what that is? Once again, this Grizzlies team has the potential to make history, something that it seems like they've done every time out over the past month.
Shawn, they're just tearing up the record books right now, from wire-to-wire wins, from blowout wins, from Desmond Bane's three-point record, Steven Adams' offense rebounds record, assist records. They're just tearing through the record book. But we both know, Shawn, there's one stat that's above all, and the players say it all the time. There's one stat that stands above all, and that's the W.
Usage rate.
And that's the one for you, Shawn.
Okay.
That's your stat. That's the players. It's the W. It's the W, and they're right there. 55 wins right now. The franchise record is 56. The Grizzlies have 4 games to achieve, to at least tie the record. But why not go for it all, Shawn? You got the Jazz coming in, who have been reeling as of late, haven't been playing well. And Shawn, I think of it like this. I think the players want it bad. They know it's right there. The players are really just aware of it. Taylor Jenkins, he's probably, if we get it, super cool. If we don't, we got the playoffs to think about. I think the players want it though, Shawn.
Absolutely. When you come to talking about the players, and you want to keep their best interest in mind, but you also want to give them the opportunity. They've earned this. Nobody expected for them to be in this position. Nobody expected for them to challenge the record or have the second best record in the NBA, but are leaving little doubt, if any at all, that they're the best team in franchise history. So let them go out and get the franchise record. They have every opportunity to. It probably is going to be good for them, but better for them than resting or just kind of resting on their laurels, getting out there, still playing competitive basketball, playing for the win. There's so many different reasons for them to be able to enjoy it. And I'll tell you this, Damichael, the thing that, again, it comes down to is that right there is another notch in or feather in the cap, I guess you could say, of this team truly being the best in franchise history.
Yeah, because you know what, that 56-win team, and we didn't mention the year yet. This was the 2012-2013 team that achieved the franchise record. But that team, if you remember, Grizzlies fans, this was the team that went to the Western Conference Finals. We're not going to talk about what happened in the Western Conference Finals, but this was the team that went to the only Western Conference Finals appearance in franchise history. For this team to be, eclipse that team, the winning his regular season, would be great. But then, at least making it to where that team made it to, and they'll be better positioned. Remember, that team didn't win the Southwest Division. That team, needed a couple things to fall their way, and they played really well to get to that Western Conference Finals. Whereas this Grizzlies team would have home court advantage until the Western Conference Finals, at least. And they'd have home court advantage over anybody in the NBA except the Phoenix Suns. So they are well positioned, Shawn, to achieve those things that you just mentioned, to be undoubtedly the best team in franchise history. I think they can do it.
Now, Damichael, I understand that we host this show together, but I'm going to go ahead and warn you. I'm about to go on a little bit of a rant here. So we're talking about this team winning 57 games in a season. A franchise record. As you mentioned, to put it into perspective, friend of the show, Keith Parrish, over at Fast Break Breakfast, he mentioned it. The Grizzlies would have home court advantage in the finals if they made it over any other Eastern Conference team. Yes, many players deserve consideration for honors. Ja should get all NBA. Jaren Jackson Jr. should get all defense. Desmond Bain should be in the most improved category, or most improved player category. The individual that has the strongest case to win a league award this year, though, on the Grizzlies is Taylor Jenkins. And I want to make this very clear, without a shadow of a doubt, without anybody in any way, shape, or form thinking that I'm leaving this open for debate. There is not a coach in the NBA that has done a better job this year than Taylor Jenkins. When you consider the fact that the Grizzlies are 20-2 without Ja Morant, and who they beat over the past several games, the Bucks, the Nets, the Warriors, the Suns, without Ja Morant, that's not got to do with Ja Morant. It's got to do with the roster, but it's got to do with Taylor Jenkins. Anyone that suggests Monty Williams should be coach of the year over Taylor Jenkins, Monty Williams has not done as good of a job as Taylor Jenkins this year. Monty Williams is certainly deserving, but he also has a team that went to the finals last year, has several playoff appearances in their past, and also has a starting lineup that has played far more together than the Grizzlies have. If your case for Monty Williams also is supported by the fact that he should have won it last year, when he was doing then what Taylor Jenkins is doing now, you're also in the wrong. He should have won it last year. That is absolutely the truth. But any fuel to Monty Williams winning coach of the year this year because he didn't last year, Taylor Jenkins has trumped that with his performance this year. Make no mistake about it. The best coach in the NBA this season has been Taylor Jenkins. And the fact that the Grizzlies are in a position to be able to get their 57th win, the most in franchise history, is proof of that. The fact they've been able to do it without many of their starters playing together for most of the season is proof of that. The fact they've been able to do it with Ja Morant out for as much as he is proof of that. And the fact that so many players have stepped up and stood out when they needed to is proof of that as well. So I'm going to put my soapbox underneath my table here. We're good, but I just want to make sure it's understood without question. If the Grizzlies get their 57th victory and the most in franchise history, Taylor Jenkins has got the final point of proof that he, without a doubt, should be NBA Coach of the Year. Damichael, your thoughts?
Shawn, I loved listening to that rant. You know, I hadn't seen that fire in you a little bit, Shawn. You really brought the fire out right there. But here's the thing. I agree, and I'm actually going to add on to it. You know, for the people who are saying still may not be convinced, Shawn is making a really good point, because here's the thing: the Grizzlies are the number one points in the paint scoring team. So guess what? You take the best paint scorer off that team, Ja Morant, and guess what? They still win. Well, they're also the top offensive rebounding team in the league. Well, guess what? Oh, you take Steven Adams out? Oh, no problem. 5-0 without Steven Adams, the best offensive rebounder in the NBA. Okay. Let's say you take out Jaren Jackson. Well, they just performed pretty well by putting in, Brandon Clark and Kyle Anderson and didn't miss a beat. It's more than just Ja Morant being out. It's more than just Tyus Jones being out. It's more than just, Dylan Brooks being out, who, oh, by the way, they went 34-14 without Dylan Brooks, we see he has made an impact in his return. We can focus on just Ja, but even you go into the deeper numbers, where when you think of Coach of the Year, you got to think about the mind, the adjustments that a coach can make. The Grizzlies lost literally the top paint scorer, the top guard paint scorer in the last 25 years. They're still at the top of the league in paint scoring. They didn't miss a beat. They just did it in a different way. Steven Adams, offensive rebounding. You couldn't see a big difference. And it had Xavier Tillman in the starting lineup. Taylor Jenkins is the type of coach where you talk about getting the most out of every single player. That's exactly what he's done to a T. We laugh because the Grizzlies just beat the Suns without a point guard, basically. Remember when DeAnthony Melton first came over from Phoenix, there was the whole talk about don't play him at point guard. He's not a point guard. And that's when he, started to play a little bit better, when he started to get comfortable in that off-the-ball role. Guess what? Taylor Jenkins is like, let's run our motion offense system then. We don't have to run high pick and roll like we do as much with Ja Morant and Tyus Jones. Let's run our motion offense where the ball is moving around. No problem. 30 assists against the number 3 of defensive efficiency team in the NBA. That's all I have to say, Shawn. You're making a great point. And Monty Williams, let's be clear, he's elite, and he should have won it last year. And Shawn's not arguing against him. It's more of how good Taylor Jenkins has been.
Absolutely. And no disrespect to Monty Williams at all. Me and Damichael got to listen to Monty Williams. It comes across as a phenomenal individual, phenomenal coach, just an outstanding ambassador to the game. But at the end of the day, if we are giving this award to the coach that has done the best job in exceeding expectations and getting the most out of his team this year, there's nobody out there with a better case than Taylor Jenkins. Obviously, though, one coach that Taylor Jenkins knows very well is Quinn Snyder. And last year, Quinn Snyder obviously had a great job, had a great campaign himself. But this year, the Utah Jazz certainly have fallen off, though the numbers itself are still very impressive. The Jazz just have run into a pretty lackluster streak here that they're hoping to overcome to avoid having to play in the play. And we'll look at their matchup against the Grizzlies in just a moment. But before we do, I want to talk about rockauto.com. Now, the thing that I can tell you is this, is that the spring is here. We've gotten past the summer, but your car may have a bit of wear and tear on it. If it does, you need to go to rockauto.com. The reason why, rockauto.com is very, very effective. Within a few clicks of the button, you'll find what you need, regardless of the make and model or the year. RockAuto.com is likely to have it. They also keep things pretty inexpensive to allow for you to be able to get the car parts you need at any point in time. When you visit RockAuto.com, let them know the Locked On Podcast Network sent you. RockAuto.com, amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the car parts you'll ever need. Visit RockAuto.com. Obviously, on tomorrow's edition of the Locked On Grizzlies podcast, we'll have plenty to discuss as far as the Grizzlies go with the fallout from the Utah Jazz. Were they able to go to Utah, get a little bit of revenge, and have some success from their last time that they beat them earlier this year, but you want to get as much revenge as possible for getting knocked out of the playoffs. That and much more on tomorrow's edition of the Locked On Grizzlies podcast. So, Damichael, let's set the stage here a little bit. So, the Utah Jazz right now are 6th in the West, and they are only a game and a half up on the Minnesota Timberwolves, who are playing excellent basketball right now. So, the thing about it is that this game has plenty of implications on a potential rematch in this year's playoffs between the Grizzlies and the Jazz from last year, except they're going to be in different positions when it comes to their placement in the Western Conference standings.
It's possible. It is certainly possible. I still think at the end of the day, the Timberwolves will get that 7th spot. I'm sure we both think that. But if the Grizzlies win this game and the Timberwolves take care of business, they're right on the Jazz's heels for that 6th seed. And the Jazz haven't been playing good. I mean, Shawn, they've lost 6 of 7. The only win was against the Los Angeles Lakers, who have lost 6 in a row. So, look, somebody had to lose that game. So, right now, Utah is playing bad. And I mean, they're losing to good teams, but it's the way they're losing. I mean, we saw the Golden State game, 18-0 run, fourth quarter. Oh, what about the loss before that against the Clippers? You know, Paul George, first game back, 35 points. They come back from 25 down. Those last 2 losses have been real demoralizing in terms of they had double-digit leads, built leads, and they got crushed. So the Jazz, they're kind of lost right now. And I don't know if you've seen the rumor, Shawn, but I've kind of, gotten a little chuckle out of the whole, breaking up the Jazz rumors that are starting to come out. I've seen, people talking about, I believe it was Tim McMahon at ESPN mentioned that, the Mavericks would be very interested in Rudy Gobert. And I saw a Twitter post after the last loss when they lost to Golden State. Donovan Mitchell was just staring in his head in the air. And someone tweets out like, oh, yeah, he's definitely gone after this year. I mean, people know he hasn't hid his love as a New York kid for probably wanting to go play in New York. Well, the Grizzlies kind of have a chance right now to put as our guy Pete Pranica would say, hammer nail coffin the Jazz and kind of, break up that squad that actually beat them last year.
Absolutely. And it's going to be interesting to see because, there are those narratives that are out there. I know that there was some fun things thrown out there. One of the wilder stats I've heard, Trae Young has more assists this season with Clint Capella, then Donovan Mitchell has passes to Rudy Gobert. It's just that it's outstanding. And, that rift's been there for a while. They've been able to, coexist and all that different stuff. But it will be interesting to see what happens in the summer. But the other thing that stands out about the Jazz is that they're just right now playing in a manner at which they're playing to lose. Like, it just seems like that they are trying to find ways to lose, or that their style of play leads them to playing to where they're lose, or they're trying to, however you want to say it, they're not playing winning basketball right now. Despite the numbers saying it, they're still a top 10 team shooting the three. One thing that certainly is going to impact the Grizzlies tonight, especially with the healthy Jazz roster, this is a very good rebounding team as well. So that's something that certainly could, put a thorn in the Grizzlies' plans to try to win in Utah. But at the end of the day, when it comes to this Utah Jazz team, right now, they're not playing winning basketball. And if the Grizzlies are able to keep it close or set the tone early and then close it out late, that's something that really could help out. And Damichael, let's not also forget, with the Lakers pick now gone, let's just be honest, it's gone. The Utah pick getting as good as possible should be a focus, and kicking their ass in Salt Lake City would be a double whammy because you'd also help out your draft positioning.
That's a good point. I mean, the Lakers pick is gone, so you got to shift the attention. You could have had 3 first-round picks, but the Lakers just stunk it up. So you know what? Get a back-end first-round pick, and you go beat them. It's a double bonus. You knock them down, and you also get a higher position. And we know the difference between a 21st pick and a 24th pick can be pretty substantial. So that's you kind of have a two-part thing right here. You get the franchise record, and you can get a higher pick in the draft. I think, from that perspective, a guy like Zach Kleiman would really want to win today. And they might put it in Taylor Jenkins' ear like, hey, look, yes, we're focused on the postseason, but this win could help us a lot for the long term, Shawn.
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, it's good to get the size back. That's probably one of the things that the Grizzlies focused on, was getting that size back, because Steven Adams and Jaren Jackson Jr. are going to have their hands full with Rudy Gobert. But if the Grizzlies are going to be able to win this game, it's setting the tone early, getting the offensive rebounds if they can, being able to hit some threes. I do think that this is a game where the Grizzlies are going to have to hit threes, because I do understand that the Jazz have certainly struggled. But at the end of the day, the style that the Jazz play with, it's the difficult matchup a lot of times for the Grizzlies. You're going to have a big game. It would be great if Jaren can have a big game now, like he did the last time the Grizzlies were in Utah and he with the game-winning shot. So at the end of the day, you're going to need to set your tone early. You don't go away from what works. But this is a game where it really feels like a big Jaren game, or a big Melton game, or somebody supporting Desmond Bane. That really could step out, as a big key to getting the victory. It really just depends on what the Grizzlies will do. Can they take advantage of whatever the Jazz are offering to hit shots early and often?
Yeah, and let's the Jazz are good. I mean, we're kind of, we're talking bad about them right now, and I mean, 6 out of 7 they've lost for right reason, but they put themselves in a good position. This was a team that was at the top of the West for the majority of the season until COVID hit them in that early part of January and late December. And that's when they really, finally hit their cold spell. But this is a good team. I mean, all the way from Conley, Mitchell, Jordan Clarkson off the bench, Bogdanovich, Royce O'Neal, really good defender, Rudy Gobert, one of the best screen setters, lob threat. I mean, we know about the defense. This is going to be a great test. You already mentioned the high altitude. I think it plays, we're going to talk about how much more of a role it plays in Denver, but it's a big factor in Utah as well. So all of those things will come into play. And I think, like, more than anything we mentioned, this could possibly be a playoff preview. I mean, not even for, let's say, even if the Jazz stay in the 6th spot, the Jazz will get the Warriors or the Mavs in that first round series. And, good Jazz can play with either of those teams. The good Jazz, not the Jazz we're seeing right now. The Jazz that we've seen for most of this season. They can play with either of those teams. We could possibly be talking about a second round matchup. So you just don't waltz into this game and overlook it. And, we got the second seed wrapped up, because you don't want to create any bad habits. And they're in a good spot. I think, the Jazz, they're going to come out playing hard. They're going to play, with intensity. They don't want to keep losing. They know the Timberwolves are right on their heels, and no one wants to be in that play-in. So I think the Grizzlies are going to get a great effort from them tomorrow. And every game the Grizzlies have played lately just felt more of that playoff intensity, that Golden State game, and even in the last game against the Suns, the way the Suns played down the stretch, it just got that playoff intensity. I think this one will replicate that too.
Absolutely. And the thing is that, listen, beating the Jazz, getting a better draft pick, all that makes sense. But I will be completely honest with you. I'd much rather play the Timberwolves than I would the Jazz in the playoffs. Let's just be honest. It would be nice to be able to beat them. But this Jazz team still, in my opinion, has one of the highest ceilings in the league with everything's clicking. It's just that you don't know when it's going to or not. And that's been a real struggle for them. Damichael, I know you're going to be there. I know you're going to have fun. I hope that you have a great time. Again, don't eat the pizza. But anything else you've got for us before we head out for this edition of the Locked On Grizzlies podcast?
Shawn, that's it. We got a great game to look forward to, and we're going to talk about it tomorrow, and stay tuned for that.
Absolutely. He is Damichael Cole. My name is Shawn Coleman. You can find Damichael at StatsSC, or you can find Damichael at Damichael C on Twitter. You can find myself at StatsSAC, the show at Locked On Grizz on Twitter. Right here on YouTube, hit that subscribe button below. For Damichael Cole, my name's Shawn Coleman. Go Grizzlies. We'll be back with you tomorrow to recap the game against Utah and obviously get ready for the game against Denver. Until then, have a great day. We'll talk to you again soon here on the Locked On Grizzlies podcast.